Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to Paws On Animation and our podcast.
And in today's podcast, we're here with an all-new list, this time covering our top 10 animated villains.
Perfect for the month of October.
Yes.
And this list covers our favorites from both the West and East, and even has some honorable mentions, cause there were too many to list. But trust us, it's a devilishly good time. But
before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, because we keep releasing future podcasts and World of Paws videos.
Yes, and be sure to let us know some of your favorites in the comments below, and if any of your favorites made it onto our list.
Yes.
So we're really excited about this, as we mentioned, so let's get started.
Yes.
Number 10 is Michael Morningstar from Ben 10 Alien Force.
Yeah, so
he's the villain you love to hate.
Yep, and when he was first introduced, it was absolutely hilarious how Kevin was just immediately jealous of him and knowing there was something wrong with him, and lo and behold, there was. He's a creep.
And there was no way we could not put this on the list, because some of you are going to go, well, compared to other villains, he's not a really big threat. That's true. But he was pretty bad during the time Ben 10 Alien Force came out.
Right.
He was a real threat within the series, and you just love to hate him. So that's why we put him at number 10.
Right.
He earned a place on here, especially the way the lines are delivered. The lovely Gwen.
Yes, and some of our favorite episodes actually do feature him before and after he goes through his disfiguration and he has to hide underneath the Dr. Doom mask. When he had his first appearance, that is one of our absolute favorite episodes of Alien Force.
And the last thing I want to add is that they had him just really pretty so that the audience would fall for him immediately. Mm-hmm. And they had Gwen fall for him like the audience. It was all lining up. Mm-hmm. And then you had Kevin being the voice of reason, knowing something was wrong with him. And then within the series at one point, he ends up being turned hideous because he's burned beyond belief.
Right, and his neck is gone.
Yes. And then at one point in the series, he's able to get back how he looks, and then it's taken away from him again. So he's had a hard time, but he deserves this, especially after what happened with Charmcaster.
Right.
So that's why he's our number 10.
And number 9, we have Ra's al Ghul from Batman franchise.
Yes. Whether it's live action or animated, this is a worthy adversary and a really evil villain. You've had him in varying degrees of evil.
Right.
But he's evil nevertheless.
Right.
The grandfather of Damian Wayne.
Right.
Who is one of the best Robins ever in the original form until the current incarnation.
Yeah. Sorry.
Ra's al Ghul is a hard taskmaster.
Yeah.
He's not kind even to his own daughter, so you don't expect him to be kind to his grandson. He has whipped him into shape, making him a formidable foe.
Yes.
At 9 years old.
Yes. So if one wants to say he's overpowered, look who his family is. Yes, he's gonna be pretty tough to beat.
And he's did the same with his daughter, but I think Damien is more badass than his mom. Now he even has access to the
Lazarus Pit.
Thank you, the Lazarus Pit, where he can keep bringing himself back in different versions.
Right.
Also help others, like was done in some of the Batman series.
Right.
But his background is evil. He's being taught to be evil his entire life, and he's paid it forward to his family.
Yes.
But he's really not a joke villain at all, in the least, in any shape or form, unless he's being a joke on Teen Titans Go. If he has been, let us know in the comments.
Which he probably has. Oh, that show works.
And probably within some universe and some series, we'll see him again. But we guarantee you he's not going to be a joke.
That's true. That's true.
Number 8 is Saleem from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Yes, and specifically that one because they had 2 different depictions of Pride in both series. Pride ended up being, Wrath. Wrath and Pride ended up switching places in the 03 when they made up their own story, where the king was Pride, and now in Brotherhood it's more accurate to the manga, where it's the son of Wrath.
And Saleem, again, is not a joke. He's truly a homunculus, thought to be just this little kid. And evil he is. You had no empathy for him, no sympathy for him, not like in Full Metal Alchemist, where he was just a little kid.
Right.
And here he is the devil incarnate. There's no way to speak of him. He is powerful. He is evil. He is devious. And even though Father tells him what to do, he pretty much just ignores him, and he does what he wants.
Right. It's like, oh my gosh.
And in here, Wrath knows whom he is.
Right.
So they're in a partnership.
Right.
And it's just crazy. The voice acting for this character was just on point. The animation is on point. This is just one of those villains that once you know him, you will not forget him.
Right.
One of the most evil children ever in animation history.
Right. And when the twist came, it did put you at a surprise because you had seen the other homunculi up until him, and when the reveal was there, like, oh gosh.
Thank you. So Saleem definitely earned a spot on this list. Wholeheartedly earned it.
Right. And now at number 7.
And Rascal's one of her favorites.
Yes. Van Kleist from Generator X series.
Who has his own awesome theme song.
Yes. One of the absolute best ones. Like, how come you people aren't using it? So for here, and I know you just probably saw us talk about Generator X not too long ago, and we mentioned quite a few times how Van Kleist was a standout villain, not just for Cartoon Network, but in terms of animation. Kind of like how Chase Young was a different kind of villain for the time the shows were out.
And unfortunately, he didn't make this list, but we love Chase Young.
Yes. And he had a connection to Rex's past, and it took you almost the entire series to see what was his connection. He was one of those characters that was shrouded in mystery for the whole run, and you didn't get the answer literally until the last few episodes.
Right.
It wasn't revealed so soon like Disney does, to the fact that you just stop caring after a while, or you lose your interest because everything's been revealed. They kept you hooked and wondering who this guy is, why was he so obsessed with getting the nanite power from Rex, why is he so connected to him, and you finally get the answer, and it's like one of the worst nightmares you could think of, and then he's already pretty formidable himself before then.
Definitely. And he's, to me, one of the most polished characters I've seen in terms of a villain. I mean, he's just polished and on point and memorable.
Yes.
Even if you forget Generator Rex, the two characters you will remember the most are Rex himself and Van Kleist.
Yes.
Without a doubt. He was evil. He was not a joke in any episode, in any shape or form.
No.
And when he and Rex finally had a showdown in one episode,
Yes.
it was one of the best episodes that the series
Yes,
had.
Absolutely.
So number 6 is Lotor, one of my favorites from Voltron Legendary Defender.
Right.
He is Lotor, the real Lotor.
Right.
All the others are miserable copies,
Ooh.
even though they came first. This Lotor was the Lotor.
Right. And it was so funny how this guy ended up becoming so controversial with the show, because clearly he was meant to be this big plot twist villain. And the thing was, unfortunately for the writers, it backfired.
Yes.
Because he was written so well, the backstory was written so well, the development was written so well.
The voice acting is
superb.
superb.
Right. And the thing with Zarkon and Hagar and really all that's happened to him, that when the time came for the plot twist, you didn't want him to be the villain and be evil by the end. You wanted him to reform and join Team Voltron and actually do good.
True.
So they end up writing him so well that they wanted him to be a good guy.
From the time he appears on the scene and he's introduced, fans fell in love with him because of how he was designed and because of his personality and how they created him as a character. And as Rascal said, you really didn't want him to be a villain. Things were going on that you kind of were getting little hints.
Yes.
He had a 4-woman team
Y-
that
right.
everyone loved, and they were just as badass as Lotor.
Right.
And then he fell for Allura, and she was falling for him. And this is before Lance and Allura became canon.
Right.
And his backstory is one that really made you empathize with him. He didn't have a chance from the beginning. His parents were awful. And even with his nanny or his
governess.
His governess, he didn't have a chance because he was going to be ruined from the start because of his parents and the influence they had on him, as well as the Galra themselves.
Right.
But this is one of the best villains ever in animation, Western animation history. And as Rascal said, you were so disappointed when you found out he was a villain, and you didn't even want him to die, as it happened in the series.
I think that was one of the
You wanted
few
him
unfair
to have
things.
a chance to have
a redemption.
Retribution and a redemption arc.
And I think that's one of the few things from the show that we agree with fans they wish they had done differently.
But he definitely deserved to be on this list.
He tricked us all! So now we have number 5 is Slade from the 2003 Teen Titans series.
Now we're getting to the top 5 that were truly evil and unequaled in anime or animation for their evilness.
Yes.
And Slade, my gosh, when this came out and he came on the scene, it was a shock to the animation world, period.
Right, and kids and everybody.
Because they did not sugarcoat him. They did not give him any type of way to have a redemption.
Right.
There was no likability for him. He was voice acted by the incomparable
Ron Perlman.
And absolutely loved his performance. And that was the best good thing about him, is his performance by Perlman. Other than that, he was absolute evil.
Yes. And this guy was so intimidating. He lasted almost the entire series. He wouldn't even die. Every time you thought he was gone, some way, shape, or form he came back, he could be 10 times worse. And he's so distinct that alongside the Titans, he's the quintessential version of Slade. That every version that comes after it has some type of nod to 03. There's like no other version can be better or do a version without connecting it to this version, because he was just that intimidating and that memorable the entire time.
And he's the most controversial villain on this list because his evilness extended to children.
Yes.
Not only what he did with Robin and torturing him mentally, physically, psychologically, but also his relationship with Tara. And we won't discuss that, but in the comics, it was way worse than portrayed in the animated series. But Slade earned his top 5 spot. If it weren't for more formidable foes who come along since then, he probably would have been our number 1.
Right.
Number 4 is Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes.
There is no way that she cannot make this list.
Yes.
She is another one who, no redemption for her. You did not know just how evil she was, and it was being unfolded during the course of the series.
Right.
When you first saw her, she's pretty and she's charming.
She's calculating.
Yes. And you think she can't be that bad. She's Zuko's sister.
Right.
Well, she's a billion times worse than you ever imagined she'd be.
Right. And she became one of the most popular villainesses as well, because at a time there really wasn't that many female villains that were incredibly memorable. Azula at least changed the game for that, what you could do writing a female villain, and she's written just as intimidating as a male one, so it was equally balanced in this show.
And there was nothing frou-frou about her. Nothing. She was hardcore.
Yes.
And part of that was because of the influence of the father.
Yes.
She really connected with him, and you could say they were two of a kind.
Right.
Because Zuko identified more with his mom.
Right.
But Azula, she, as you said, calculating. She was formidable. She could figure things out from what was going on. She knew when a lie was a lie, especially when she thought she had killed the Avatar, and she was talking to Zuko, and she said, "You have nothing to worry about, do you? He is dead, isn't he?" And they show her eyes like she's like, "I know some way this darn man has made, his kid has made, well, he's a man, he has made it through. I know he's made it, and I'm not going to take the fall. Zuzu, you are. You can just see it."
And what was so crazy about this is that she was memorable even long after the show went off.
Definitely.
And what became so odd is that Hollywood ended up trying to redeem the character. A character that was irredeemable, suddenly they decided, well, it's not her fault she's cruel, manipulative, and crazy like her father. Then they tried 2 times. In the comics, they gave her a quote-unquote redemption arc that didn't feel anything like redemption. All of it shows that she didn't kill any of her teammates and she let them go.
And I was going to mention
it's like, that's it?
And that's the last thing to mention is her team, a team of Zulu, you might say, with May.
Right, and Ty Lee.
And they
like,
got
what?
to the point where They were afraid of her for a long time, but they got to the point where they realized she was so crazy, each of them in their own way abdicated from Azula's rule. And if you haven't seen Avatar The Last Airbender, I don't know what's happening. If you have, let us know in the comments what scale on 1 to 10 you rate Azula.
Right.
Because for our list, she made 4 because, again,
right.
since the show aired, there are more formidable foes.
Right. And don't try to redeem her, Netflix. We don't want that.
No.
And now number 3, All for One from My Hero Academia.
Yes. We were conflicted between he and Nine, but Nine was like a one appearance villain in the movie.
Right.
So we chose All for One instead, but you could kind of say they were sort of at a tie until he was taken out.
Right.
But All for One is one of those villains that you think they can't get any more evil. And each season, you find out more and his backstory is more and more horrible. Mm-hmm. What he's done to family, friends, people he's groomed.
Yeah.
He's just one of the most horrible villains and people ever alive in anime or animation history.
Right. And at the point when you finally get the backstory of this villain, you knew that yet again there was no redemption for this character. He was like this from the get-go, and when the powers manifested him and his brother, it just made it worse. So it just kept pointing out that there are these types of people that if they were given powers, some wouldn't be heroes. They would just use the powers to take out people they didn't want or make the world in their own way.
I think this is a shout out with All for One and his brother to Trigun with Million Knives and Bash.
Yes.
The same type
so.
Duality.
Right.
Definitely, because you have one who wants to do good and loves the human race and wants to help. You have the other who's just horrible and wants to kill everybody and have all the power for himself.
Right.
If you've seen Trigun, then you can see the parallels. And possibly Horikoshi was inspired by Trigun, the original.
Right. And the guy is a threat from the beginning to almost the
Definitely.
very end of the series. Like, until the last few chapters where you know he's going to be defeated. He is intimidating force. And it's not someone they built up to, like, just talk to, just to mouth off and say things, doesn't do anything. He was formidable back when he was fighting All Might, and All Might was at low power. Then he comes back later, and he's 10 times worse with even more power, because he was already a threat back then, and scaring the heck out of these kids.
Yeah.
And then he comes back later, it's like, okay, he can do 10 times worse now when he's on the verge of taking over Japan or the world.
And the last we've seen of him in season 7, he's now being rejuvenated, youthful to his youthful appearance and state, and he's ready to just wreak havoc. But we know that our heroes are going to take him down.
Right.
And we are so happy they will.
Right.
Number 2, before we get to our top 2, let us know in the comments below what you think of the list so far. And so far, if we haven't mentioned some of your favorite villains, let us know them in the comments as well.
Right.
Now for number 2, one has become a favorite worldwide because of his evilness. And some people even simp on him. We don't.
Oh.
Muzan Kabutsuji from Demon Slayer.
Yes. A.K.A. the Demon King of Pop.
My goodness. This is the best villain Michael Jackson you've ever seen. Not just from looks and from the way they make him behave and move, but he is evil incarnate.
Yes.
There is not another character in Demon Slayer, another demon, but the father of demons who has earned this title.
Right.
His backstory, he doesn't even get redemption there. He was evil from the beginning. He was ruthless. He didn't care whom he used, whom he killed. And yes, he was as pretty when he was human as he is as a demon.
Right.
And he is just full of himself.
Very much so.
Believe it or not, this man has had wives and children, but we don't find out a lot of information on them. But unfortunately, there have been women married to him and children born from him.
Like, oh my gosh.
And we feel sorry for all of them.
Right? And he's yet another villain that's been a constant threat throughout the entire series. Even if he doesn't get to battle until the final arc, he's still one of those figures like the Fire Lord, who's just in the background and controlling the strings and doing everything while he sits back and watches the show and have his lackeys do the work. And when the time comes for him to finally be the final boss, it's definitely something to remember, because up until then, they just keep building up just how cool this guy can be, even when he's not in their presence. And he can be literally intimidating even from a distance. He can't even be in the same room, in the same country or something, and people still fear him.
Last two things that put him at number 2. One, he spent his entire life trying to find the blue lily so he could find a way to be able to be in the sunlight, because as a demon, sunlight still kills him.
Like a vampire, yeah.
And when he found out that Nezuko had somehow conquered the sun, then his number one goal became, he didn't care about the demons he'd made. He wanted to kill them all, get her, eat her, and live forever.
Oh my God.
And then the last thing is that when he enters the second to the last episode of season 4, he has one of the coolest entrances ever that comes at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
And you were like, these people were loving drawing him, animating him. You could tell that the author loved writing him. So that's how Muzan has made our number 2.
Right.
And at number 1,
we have
Ryomen
Sukuna
Sukuna from Jujutsu Kaisen.
Yes.
And he is not only the father of curses, but the father of this villain's list.
Right. And I think this one now is officially the biggest intimidating threat learning the whole series type villain. Muzan was one, Offering was one, but Suga seemed to be one that outlasts them all because he's been around for thousands of years.
Yes, and he has found a way to bring himself back during those thousands of years by taking his fingers, he has 20 because he has 4 arms, and spreading them around so that people end up ingesting them and he ends up coming back alive.
Right.
Until he gets taken out and comes back again another time.
Right.
His most challenging time is now with Yuji and the Gojo, Team Gojo, because they are determined to wipe him out and take him out so he doesn't come back again. But the King of Curses, right now, in the anime, at the end of season 2, wants to take over the world, and he wants to exist forever. And they've got a really big challenge for them. If you've been online, there's spoilers for the end of the series. We've got 3 volumes left at this time, and you know his fate. The good thing is, with all of these villains, they end up having a fate that they deserve and an ending, and so does Sukuna. But during the time that he's existing in this universe, he is unparalleled in evil. He is so evil that unlike Muzan, who had families throughout the centuries, marrying, having children, this man never been married, never had children.
Nope.
It's questionable he's ever had sex.
Right.
And he was so focused on being the father, or the King of Curses is what he calls himself.
Right. So, yes, that is why he had to be the number 1 list, because he's so far one of the biggest intimidating villains in anime or animation that has made an impact globally.
And besides Gojo, who has been voted number 1 in the latest poll, he is probably the second most memorable and popular character in JJK. Now, I know we had the poll. We had number 1 Gojo, number 2 Yuji, number 3 Megumi. But for people who are villain fans, Sukuna is it.
Right.
And he has earned that number 1 spot in our villains countdown.
Yes.
Now for our honorable mentions, and we only have 2 this time. One is a character called Ink from Batman Beyond.
Yes. And she was probably one of the most interesting new villains they created for the show and for the Batman lore. She had a very interesting backstory, as well as family ties with each episode you saw her introduced. You made it clear she's still a criminal, but she did have a sort of empathetic side when it came to her daughter in one of her last appearances. But she makes it clear what she wants. She wants to have stabilization so she can keep committing these crimes and get this money.
And she's so memorable, she had to make this list. We thought she would possibly have a redemption arc in one episode, but no. Even with the daughter doesn't forgive her for what she's done, and she refused to change, and she had an opportunity to change, and she didn't choose it. Like Sukuna.
Right.
And our second honorable mention is Lord Dominator from Wander Over Yonder.
Yes, we had to mention her because she was the Disney equivalent of a world-conquering villain.
Absolutely.
Only this time, Hader wanted to take over the universe. down there and wanted to destroy the universe. And the scariest part is she succeeded.
Yes.
She literally blew up just about every planet solar system, and she ended up being bored because she won.
Yes. And Vader tried to
woo her.
woo
Like,
her,
why?
relate to her, be friends with her. She wasn't having it.
Right.
And even our lovable Wander tried to rehabilitate her, to connect with her, and
Right.
it wasn't happening.
She was just one of those ones
She-
that didn't change.
Yeah, and she said she was never going to change and just stop trying to be friends with her.
Yeah.
And for that reason, and if you've seen the series, she made this list.
Right.
So, do any of your favorites make our top 10 animated villains of all time? Let us know in the comments. And if not, tell us when we left out, and possibly we can do another villains list at another time.
Right. And if you haven't already, subscribe for updates and good videos for your anime series, anime shows, and all things animation.
Yes, we hope you're enjoying your Spooktober at this time. This list was a perfect addition to our podcast for this month. And thank you so much for subscribing, for sharing our videos, for commenting, and for joining us. We appreciate you so much. And as always, you are special.
Thank you so much for watching Rascal Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.
Enough with the singing already! Obviously, I'm the greatest! Besides, show's over.